Pauline, thank you for coming. Pauline Silverman headed up place-based regeneration in Fife and in Grangemouth in Scotland for SEPA for several years, a really successful project that I've been very privileged to be on the sidelines of. So Pauline, thank you for chatting today.
You're welcome.
You have so much knowledge about what it really is like to get a project from nothing to being successful, including 16 organizations and so on. Will you talk to us a little bit about sort of place-based regeneration and why it's interesting maybe first, and then what maybe some of the challenges?
It's funny because I'd never heard the phrase placemaking until we started doing what we were doing. It was just a very focused project on an area with multiple pressures, but also multiple people trying to fix those pressures and all doing it separately. And so my first thought was, how can we bring these people together to try and join forces, collaborate, and stop wasting a lot of public money and effort and resource and private. And we found the narrative through the environment, through the river. The river had been an important asset back in the day. That's where all the mills and the mines and the people in the communities had grown around that. With the Industrial Revolution, those communities were decimated. So a lot of the issues, the good stuff that had grown from the river and people growing around that were lost. And the river itself needed fixed. So with SEPA, the Environment Agency, we had a role to fix the river, to restore some of those industrial historical impacts. But it didn't seem enough to do that, just do that, with those communities who were there who didn't have access to a clean, safe, healthy environment. So we started talking to a few of the key sort of players in the area, the local authority, and the communities as well. That one of the things we found with regeneration is that quite often what the communities and areas you need to regenerate, the people who live there are exhausted. They're exhausted with new ideas, with this old people coming in and swooping in and saying they're going to make things better.
Yeah, and that was one of the things you really did differently, because I remember speaking to some of those communities. They basically said, oh, but we've had a part in this. So it was a co-creation rather than, you know, the Environmental Protection Agency swooping in and saying, let me tell you how to sort this out, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And very humbling. I mean, we don't know how to do that. We are regulators, learning from communities, but also if we can attract funding, which we did to some of the projects, bringing in the communities and giving them a purpose, a sustainable legacy that they can come in and they can use the funds, they can bring in young people to work with them. We can pay these community groups to help us deliver that project. So it's not just talk, it's something more than that.
And it's been super powerful over the last few years.
Yeah.
So powerful that you've basically moved it from the Leven in Fife and then started replicating it in Grangemouth a couple of years ago, I feel like. Yeah.
Everyone knows it's a good thing, you know, and I think we come against this all the time. If it's such a good thing and the challenge is there and the urgency is there, why can't we do it?
Yeah.
And it's just that fear or that day-to-day grind that organisations have, the governance, everything that pulls people back, and it's a terrible thing to see because people in the organisations want to do something and they can't. So that's the hardest thing. It's not been difficult though, and it's not a difficult process to build, you know. It's an Grangemouth. That's why it was so scalable. It's a totally different area. It's got, you know, it's the largest industrial cluster in Scotland.
Yeah.
You know, but the issues are the same. The partners are generally the same. And once you've started that dialogue and you get that shared vision, it's quite easy to move it.
And that's been wonderful to see, because when I first came into the project, all I heard was that it's Pauline. And if without Pauline, this is all going to fall apart. So to see it move from one to another, and then the latest development that you've left SEPA.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what were the challenges where you thought, okay, enough? Because I know how much you love that.
Yeah, I loved my job. 20 years with SEPA, a great agency, great organisation, full of great people. A lot of things happened, the same with everyone. We had COVID, it was quite difficult for the organisation to recover. And we had a cyber attack nearly 2 years ago and we lost everything.
Christmas, I remember.
Yeah. And I think the pace of rebuild has been terrible because we're an environmental organisation. We weren't built for those kind of crises. So all the focus has been on that. And so the work we've been doing has been much more difficult. So yeah, so I thought maybe for me it was time for a change. It's quite tiring. So I've set, the Leven is running, it's great. And we've got a brilliant team on that. So I've no doubt that will continue to go from strength to strength. We've just got more funds from the Heritage Lottery, and you know, there's a lot of exciting things happening there. So there's just time for change.